I'm Dave, the caregiver's caregiver. We have an especially exciting show planned for you today. From small town roots to combat skies, business boardrooms, and the author's desk, Don Eggspuehler's journey is one of resilience, love, and lifelong storytelling. Don, so great to have you on the Caregiver Dave radio show, along with my lovely co-host, best-selling author, former mayor of Grover Beach, California, Debbie Peterson. How are you doing today, Debbie?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Dave.
Good.
I'm wondering, talking about the book, what was it that made you write this particular book? And this one is the one star bench warmers and teachings from Pop. Is that right?
Well, Start Benchwarmers was the first book, and it was really a memoir about my wife, Linda, who got brain cancer at the age of
Mm.
46 and passed
Oh,
away 8 months later.
Oh my.
And we've been married for 23 years. Our two daughters were pretty well grown and in college at the time, and my son was just starting high school. He was just 15 at the time. And the book was really a journal that I kept every day because I didn't want to forget any of the doctors or the appointments or what was going on from day to day. Ever since her very first diagnosis, which was in the spring. And, she'd gone through a lot of tests, had a funny metallic taste in her mouth that just wouldn't go away. And they ran all kinds of tests and finally did an MRI on her brain and found a small tumor clear down in the very deepest part of the brain that was inoperable, and it was about the size of an M&M peanut at the time, but it grew very rapidly, and eventually, after about 8 months, it grew to the size of about a tennis ball inside her brain, and she couldn't really stay awake more than just a few hours a day and basically went into a coma and then passed away. And so I thought, well, I kept this journal. Actually, I waited several years to write the journal until I was retired. And I thought, this might be something my kids would like to have someday, this journal of what happened every day. But I thought, that would be a pretty sad book because it starts off with her being healthy and, her passing away. So what I did is I interjected stories of how we met and how we courted and got married and had children and all the happy times from our marriage of 23 years. And I gave it to my kids as a Christmas present. And they loved it. And they kept asking for more and more copies of this manuscript for their friends and for family. And so I decided to publish it just to simplify everybody getting a good copy with all the pictures and so forth, and get away from the Xerox machine having to make copies. And that's how it got published in the first place. And I really never really promoted it very much, because it was mainly for the family and for close friends and so forth. But again, over the years, it's been fairly popular as far as other people reading it and understanding what it's like to be a caregiver. And all of a sudden, you're kind of thrust into this environment, and my kids especially, at their young age, were thrust into this, and how they each kind of did a different role as caregivers. So that's the basics of the
so
book
how old,
right there.
Don? How old were you, and how old were your wife when she passed away?
This was in 1998 that she passed away. She was only 46 years old. I was 5 years older than her, so I was in my early 50s at the time.
Oh,
And my kids, like I said, my daughters were in college or just graduating from college at that time.
how did you how
I
did
was
you handle that, Don? I mean, what was going on in your mind? And
well,
how long was the caregiving before she passed away? The diagnosis to the death. How long was that?
It's about 9 months altogether. And again, it progressed pretty rapidly. And I've talked to lots of people, that other people that have gone through brain tumors, and that's the crazy thing about it. You just never know how long it's going to last, uh, and it's going to grow. All the tumors are a little bit different. This particular tumor was so deep in the brain, and it sent out little fingers, kind of, so they couldn't. It wasn't just a round tumor that they could cut out. So
Yeah.
that was why it was inoperable. so far down in her brain that they really, she wouldn't have been able to
Yeah.
survive that kind of
You
a
know,
surgery.
our audience are
So,
burned out caregivers, and we have a lot of people who went through what you went through and going through it right now. I'd like to concentrate on you and how you managed to get through those 9 months. What was it like, and how bad did it get, and what helped you get through it? And are you still going through it?
well,
The
those
grief,
are all
you know,
great questions.
the grief.
And
Yeah,
the thing about it is life doesn't always go the way you want it to go. And you have some great times and you have some really sad times. And this was one of those saddest of times for our family. But the interesting thing was my kids actually helped me and I helped them get through this.
really.
And it was a bonding experience for us. Something that, again, as a child, you shouldn't have to go through, but it's just how life deals the cards sometimes. And the good news on all of this was she didn't have a lot of pain or seizures or anything like that. It was just she kept getting more tired and sleepier, and to where she was sleeping almost 22 hours a day. But again, she understood the kids and she still had her faculties as far as speech and so forth. And she appreciated everything we did for her, and the kids really did all kick in as caregivers in different ways, which was
Yeah.
kind of amazing to watch as well.
And
And they all learned some very valuable life lessons. And thank goodness we all had the time to talk to her and have closure with
right.
her. And she adopted it as, she was a fairly religious woman. And she said, this is God's way. And, you know, I'm, I'm at peace with my life. And quite honestly, she had done everything in her life that she really wanted to do. She had three good kids that had grown up to be responsible adults. And she got to be a surgical technologist the last several years of her life, where she got to be involved in brain operations and also the cranial facial
Hmm.
surgeries, which are very complex surgeries. But she was right there with the doctors performing
Can
the
you give
surgeries, and
us,
she was.
sorry for interrupting, but can you give us some specific examples of how your kids helped you and how you helped your kids get through it all?
Well, first of all, my oldest daughter, she kind of went into denial of the whole thing, and she was the oldest, but she said, I'll take the phones because everybody was calling all the time. And that is kind of depressing to have to go through the same story
Sure.
over and over. Your friends, and they're concerned, they mean well, but it's just an awful lot of phone calls coming in. And she took care of that and kind of kept everybody up to date so that they wouldn't keep calling. She'd call them and communicate with them. So that was her way of being a caregiver. My second daughter, Jamie, she was the athlete of the family, and she was a coach, a personal coach to Linda every day uh, to help her get up and walk and get some exercise and just, always kind of helping out. And at that point, she was a freshman at Abilene Christian and college basketball player, but it was over the summer that she was home all summer and did eventually transfer to a college here in Dallas. So she was her personal coach. And then my son, Chad, he was only 15 at the time, but he was just starting high school and had a lot of other things to contend with. But he was just the quiet one that would sit with her at night and talk with her and just be there. It was really interesting how all three of them were so different. And, uh, and then I was just trying to keep them on track and keep the family running. And I still was working, so I still had a job to do during the day. And so it was kind of you feel like a juggler sometimes. Now you asked the question, how did I deal with it? I really dealt with it hit hardest after she passed away. And I went to two different grief recovery groups, which were fabulous. Because I'll tell you, these people were going through the exact same thing that I had
Yeah.
gone through in different diseases or different deaths. But it was family members, and uh, we just all talked and shared with each other what we were going through, and the depression afterwards and so forth, I did also go to some counseling, uh, which helped me a lot personally. Actually, it helped me deal with some of my feelings about Vietnam because I had carried that for 20 something years. So it was real helpful to go to a counselor and just talk things out. And I think that's what your podcast does to a lot of people is it sharing information and I think people that helps people deal with whatever they're facing.
Debbie?
Well, one of the things that you haven't said, you've told us how much everybody was doing, which has got to be exhausting. Are there other things that contribute to the exhaustion? Why is it so exhausting when you're a caregiver?
Well, uh, going back and reliving it as much as I can, when you're trying to juggle so many things at once, a job, dealing with an illness in the family, and then watching her deteriorate in front of my eyes. That was the other thing that, the doctors were doing everything they possibly could. But the problem with a brain tumor is they couldn't use chemotherapy because of the brain block. And they did do the radiation, pinpoint radiation on the tumor, which did kill part of the tumor, but it didn't stop it from growing outward. So and she could only do so much radiation, and then they had to stop. And again, it was inoperable. So we were all kind of resigned to the fact that it was just we're just trying to make her as comfortable as possible and be there for her and tell her how much we love her.
Mm.
And that helps you deal with it, I guess.
At
I
what
think some
point?
of the
Go ahead. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I was in the grief recovery groups. One of the hardest things for me to watch was a lady that had been in a fight with her husband that morning, and he was killed in a car wreck.
Mm.
And she had that guilt feeling of no closure, first of all, and then secondly, she wished that she hadn't had that fight with him that morning. And you just everybody is a little different, but they're all dealing with a lot of the same emotions, and it is exhausting when you go through all those emotions. No
Yeah.
question about it.
I remember Dr. Laura Schlesinger used to get these calls, and one woman was just complaining about how her husband used to cut his toenails and left them all over the bathroom, and it just irked her so much. They'd fight about it all the time. And after he died, she says, "You know what, Dr. Laura, I would give anything to see those toenail clippings on the floor again." It just really gives you perspective. But I wanted to ask you
That is,
about at what point during those 9 months when she first had the diagnosis were you all positive and optimistic and it's just going to be a speed bump? We'll get through this. And then at what point did was it pretty obvious that you know what I don't think this is going to work out the way we want?
yeah, and that is covered in the book exactly just as you just described it. At first, we were all really behind her and really rooting for her, and we're going to get through this, and they're going to figure out a way. And then again, after we started going to the neurologist and we saw the x-rays and we saw how fast the tumor was growing in there after a month or so, and then again they were basically saying there wasn't much except radiation that they could do.
Mm.
It was about the halfway point, I suppose, where we really knew, and she knew, that it was a terminal illness. And again, we're just the doctors and her were just trying to make her comfortable, and we were all resigned to the fact, and that did help us with the closure on this thing
Yeah.
because we had time to really sit with her and really just talk about life and kids and the things that are important.
I know this is a difficult topic and I'm sorry to keep bringing up these memories for you, but you're helping other people. And how would you compare the grief process when you first found out and you were all optimistic, and then when you realized, oh, this may be it? Uh, was it a different kind of grief? I mean, was there's something called anticipatory grief that you're hopeful, but you know that in the back of your mind this could happen, and trying to be positive and this and that. They say the grief process, the first stage is denial, and then anger, and then bargaining, how we can get out of this, and then depression, and then finally that wonderful place of acceptance, the accepting the new normal. Uh, how did how did they differ, the two time period?
I think I think it's just a matter of degree of that feeling. You feel it right off the bat in your heart, but it does get a little bit worse and worse, and you get mad a bit. Why is this happening to us? That sort of thing, and then finally you accept it, and that's when you feel the relief, and that's what the grief recovery groups helped me so much.
You ever
So
get mad
that
at
it is,
God?
but it's kind of the same grief. It's kind of the
Yeah.
same emotion, just deeper and deeper.
Did you ever actually get mad at God?
Oh yeah, I did, and and again, Linda and I had several meetings with our pastor, and she accepted it very quickly.
Quicker
And
than
I
you,
was
huh?
fighting.
Quicker than you.
I accepted at first, and then it was a gradual process for me to finally understand it, and just bad luck for
So sorry.
her. She was so
Debbie,
healthy and always paid so much attention to staying fit and staying healthy and eating the right foods and all that stuff. Never smoked, didn't drink anything more than a glass of wine once in a while.
yeah,
So again, she did everything right, but
it's
it
ironic. You
was,
hear about these guys who smoke non-filter cigarettes all their life, and they live to be 80, 90 years old. And then,
yeah,
like in the 70s, there was this runner who was really healthy and he just dropped dead of a heart attack. Wow. Debbie, you had a
Yeah,
question?
so your kids were juggling school and their mom passing and obviously had their own journeys. How are they all doing now?
they've all done wonderful. Actually, that's a great question. My oldest daughter has been married for almost 20 years now, and they have two kids that are teenager age, and they live out in San Francisco. Have a great life going on. My middle daughter has two 8-year-old twins, daughters, and they live here in the local area, and so we get to see the grandchildren quite a bit. And my youngest son, Chad, is a partner in a law firm up in Cleveland. Has gone all the way through law. He went to law school at Ohio State, and he also clerked for several federal judges up in the Ohio area, and he's made Ohio his home. Uh, and he owns a home up in Akron and commutes up to Cleveland every day. So they've done wonderful, and I'm very proud of them. Love to see them as much as I can.
It's a great testament to both you and your wife that the kids weathered all of this and turned out to be such nice, great individuals.
Now, how
Yeah,
many
and I give my
years?
wife
Go
a
ahead.
lot
I'm
of credit
sorry.
for that you just mentioned because she was the one that was home all the time with the kids. I had to travel a lot during my working career in computer software sales. I covered 8 or 9, 10 states at a time, so I was flying every week for a couple 3 days. But the good news is she was home nurturing the kids, getting them to school, meeting with the teachers, and teaching them most of everything they needed to be successful. And I got to be home on the weekends to go to all their games and so forth. But I really give her 90% of the credit for them turning out so well.
How many years has it been since she's been gone? Sorry,
Died in 1998. So it has
98.
been a
So
while.
it's been a while. So
Yeah.
how are you doing? Everybody always asks, after the grief period, are you even thinking of dating? I mean, some people get married a year after their spouse dies. Some people, 10 years, some people 20 years, some people never, you know. What's going on with
Yeah.
you?
Well, that's a great story in itself. I was very lucky. Actually, I stayed a bachelor for 20 years.
Wow.
I dated a lot of different ladies, and I just didn't ever feel the same connection I had with Linda.
You
And
were
then I met
trying.
another.
You were trying and you were dating, but it didn't work
I
out.
did. I did. And I was on Match.com quite a bit to meet other people maybe didn't know. But the interesting thing is in 2016, I met current wife, Linda is her name, only with a Y, Linda. Uh, and she had been married previously for 30 years and had a happy marriage. And her husband had died of cancer also. So we had that connection that we both had gone through this. And then on our first lunch together, she told me that her father had been a pilot in the Navy in World War II. He had gone to Ohio State University, and he was a drummer, which all those things just hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought, this is almost like the Twilight Zone. And
Yeah.
we turned out to really get along great. And we got married a year later. So we've been married now for 7, 8 years. And um, she has 4 grandchildren. I have 4 grandchildren. So we really just enjoy family still. Uh, and we have a wonderful life going on here in Richardson. So uh, I've been blessed to find 2 really good marriages.
Yeah, they say you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. How did the kids accept, some kids uh, really don't handle it well when the surviving spouse starts dating. They think, you're trying to replace mom or whatever. And sometimes there's real friction between that. Sometimes they encourage, oh, dad, you need to go out, you're lonely, blah, blah, blah. What was it like with your kids and their acceptance of that?
Well, that's a great question, Dave. That did happen with the very first lady that I dated after Linda passed away, and it was an
How
old
long did
friend.
that, how long after she passed did that happen?
This was about a year later,
Okay.
and
Decent amount of
I
time.
she was an old friend of mine that I knew all the way from grade school through high school, and I never dated her in high school. And she'd moved on and gone to Wisconsin, got married, had a couple of kids. Then she went through a divorce and moved to Phoenix to be with her sister. And so we had a long distance relationship for 10 years
Oh, wow.
because we were so close and we traveled a lot together, but we just weren't right for marriage. And she didn't want to get married again because she'd had a really bad marriage with this
Yeah.
guy. And that's what I was looking for, was another happy marriage. So we did date for a long time. And then we finally said, after 10 years, we said, this really isn't going anywhere. And my kids did not react to her very well right off the bat, especially my second daughter, because she was still living at home and really
Awkward.
uh, didn't like her that well. And I think, for exactly the reasons you just mentioned, it was kind of a threat to her mother and all that all of her memories. So by the time I met, we call her Linny Lou, Lynn. She It was 20 years since my wife had passed, so it was much easier for my kids, and they were adults and married themselves, so they really understood it much more that I needed the companionship of somebody in my retirement years. And they accepted her. They've just been wonderful, actually, to her, and she's been the same way back to them. And so it's really turned out to be a wonderful experience.
Look at the clock. I wish we had another hour to keep talking to you. Yeah, go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, well, I'm curious if people want to find out more or get copies of your books, how would they do that?
That's a great question, Debbie. I have a website and it's called lifelessonsbooks.net. It's got a biography of me on there, but also it's got all of my books that I've published so far. Uh, 2 of them are called Life Lessons Learned in Grade School, which are about my stories growing up in Iowa Falls as a little kid. One is called Teachings from Pop, which are the teachings of my grandfather growing up in Iowa Falls about 50 years ahead of me, and about the early settlers and the founders of the town. It's a historical fiction, which takes you back to the settlers and then jumps up to the 1950s and then goes back to the settlers and the Civil War, so forth. That's called Teachings from Pop. And then this one is Star Benchwarmers. The first one is about Linda's struggle with brain cancer and how our family reacted to that and helped her through it. And most of the books are available on Amazon. However, if they go to my website, they can get Star Benchwarmers for much less, about a third of the cost of Amazon, because it hasn't been a big bestseller. And so Amazon has jacked the prices way up to where it's almost, and so if they go to lifelessonsbooks.net, they can get the book for it's around $10 for the paperback plus shipping. So
All right.
it's much more affordable on my website.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the show. Debbie, how can people reach you if they want to know more about what you do?
The best place is mayordebbie.com. And if you'd like to read any of my Integrity 101 series books on how to do better government, then you can get those on Amazon. Also, Debbie Peterson, Integrity 101.
And my best-selling book, It's Your Life Too, How to Survive and Thrive as a Caregiver, is available wherever books are sold. Also on our website, caregiverdave.com. And don't forget our Facebook page, Caregiver Dave, 34,000 caregivers helping each other. So again, big thank you to all my listeners out there all over the world for tuning in every Wednesday, making us the #1 caregiver podcast on the internet. So until next week, same time, same channel. May God richly bless you all. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much for having me on.
It's our pleasure.
It was really nice to have your message.
Great show, Dawn. Thanks for sharing your book and your story. And, there's a reason that everything happens. And pretty soon we'll all be together in heaven and we can see all the women we married and our mom and our dad,
Yeah.
grandparents. And
I think
God says there won't be
my
marriage
age,
in heaven. So it'll be interesting how that all works out.
it really is. I mentioned this in Teachings for Pop, but if you live to be 70 years old, that's only 25,500 days. And that
Oh my gosh, that's a lot. It sounds like a lot to me.
I've made 2 jars of marbles, one for me, one for my wife. And I figure I'm going to live to be 90 and she'll probably live to be 90. She's 10 years older than me. So I have twice as many marbles as she has, but, it's about 1,000 marbles each. No, she has 500. I have 1,000. And every Sunday I take a marble out and I stuck it in another jar, but there's still a lot of marbles in there. So, you gotta just be excited about what we have left and savor them, don't waste them.
Exactly. Live every day to the fullest.
Yep.
That's my motto.
Well, thanks again, Don.
Thanks again. This is a great interview.
Thanks for coming every week, Debbie. Your faithfulness, you're wonderful. And we'll get together again soon sometime. Take you sailing.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yep. We'll have to get that organized. Bye-bye.
One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships is about Charlene, a stroke survivor. Back in 1996, Charlene was a healthy, normal, very active 52-year-old woman whose amazing talents resembled that of both a Martha Stewart and a Wonder Woman. But all that changed when she suffered a massive stroke that left her severely speech impaired and paralyzed on the right side. Who am I? My name is David. I've had the privilege of being Charlene's husband since 1975. We had a wonderful fairy tale storybook-like courtship that culminated in our marriage a year later. Charlene had just come out of a marriage where after 10 years, she received 2 black eyes and a broken nose by her former husband when he came home high on speed. Charlene believed in no second chances of any kind for abuse, so she left. Finding herself all alone in the world with her 5 and 10-year-old daughters Cynthia Lorraine and Deborah Lynn, she started raising them by herself for the next 2 years. Then fate brought us all together. After falling in love with Charlene, Cindy, and Debbie, our love then produced Rebecca Elizabeth. We had a wonderful, normal life for the next 20 years. But today, things are very different for everyone. How about the reaction of 9-time Grammy and Dove Award recipient, the godfather of contemporary gospel Christian music, Andre Crouch? Charlene just won't let the promises of God go, and she has not let her circumstances get in the way of her faith. She's not just a survivor, she's more than a conqueror, as the Bible states. You'll be encouraged by her testimony, regardless of what you're going through. Available everywhere.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again.